Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's stream. This is the Sydney Game Developer stream, and we have Andrew, who's going to be coming up shortly to tell you all about how he messed with time in Unity, creating a game for our most recent game jam at Wargaming Sydney. This stream is, of course, sponsored by Wargaming Sydney. And if you are interested in the studio, we actually have a bunch of roles open at the moment. So if you want to head over to www.wgsydney.com and go to our careers page, you'll be able to see all the roles that are available in the Sydney studio, and you'll be able to find out a bit more information about what it's like behind the scenes here at Sydney. Okay, a couple of ground rules for tonight. Andrew can't see the chat, so don't say anything rude about him in there. But if you do have questions, you can put the questions into the chat, and then during our Q&A session at the end, I'll be able to read those out to him. When it comes to the Q&A session, we'll go for about sort of 15 minutes once Andrew's finished, and then we'll head over to the Games with Wings Discord server, where we'll be able to chat longer, and you can ask Andrew any other questions to your heart's content. When the time comes, I will put a link to that down in the chat. Okay, I'm sure you've heard more than enough from me, so I'm going to hand you over to Andrew, who is going to show you a very mind-bending game and hopefully explain how on earth he did it. Okay, Andrew, over to you.
Hi. I thought we'd just leap straight into it. So let's just hit level 1, because it's nice to start something with no expectations and just get your honest, unfiltered first impressions. So here we have an explosion that happened, a bunch of explosions. I'm not causing them. What's causing them? Interesting. So now we've got a corridor. There's nothing behind us. Might as well go forward. We've got a countdown timer in the top left and a little doorway. So let's go through the doorway and let's just pause there and take a step back for a second. So it's 2 days until a presentation, and I just gave a practice presentation, and one of my teammates, Bilal, was watching and gave me some notes, and he said I should introduce myself. So, hi, I'm Andrew Shelshire. Also, he mentioned I should talk about some of the structure of the talk, so talk about the structure of the talk, future Andrew. Yes, good thinking. All right, I better talk about the structure of the talk. Hi, I'm Andrew. So let's bring up the old PowerPoint slides. Oops, and let's actually go to the first slide instead of like slide 21. Slide 1, dump. Very official and organized. Okay, so this presentation here is about it's going to have a couple of different things in it. I'm going to be talking about some game design, and the bit that I think is mostly what it was advertised is how to use Unity to do reverse time kind of nifty stuff. But I'd also like to finish off by talking a bit about how we got together the team and how it all worked together. And there were some, I thought, really useful lessons about how to do a game jam kind of stuff. So, yeah. It's the 25th of June, just the end of Hack Ops. We just finished making the game. And this is just a reminder to future me, if I'm talking about this game at some point in the future, I am at a hypothetical thing, then you should totally talk a little bit about Hack Ops. Okay, good luck. Thank you. Another good point. I don't know how he keeps finding me at the right time. So talking about Hack Ops. Hack Ops is a game jam, and we ran it in 23rd to 25th of June, something like that. I think I just said. And it's an opportunity for people in Wargaming Sydney to get together and team up with people who they don't normally work with. 3 days of hackathon, do what you like. We're encouraged to come up with their own ideas for stuff, and yeah, so it's a good, fun little thing. Hello, future me. We should make a game based around Tenet. It would be really cool. You could have people traveling backwards in time and forwards in time and interacting with each other across different times. Do it. Okay, I'm going to pretend that I didn't know that that was going to happen. Okay, so talking about Tenet, let's. You might not have seen Tenet. Let me give a brief. Uh, nope. So Tenet's a pretty cool movie. It's got some nice acting performances, Christopher Nolan's usual messing with the mind kind of stuff. And the main premise of it, sorry if you haven't seen it yet, but it's not spoiled particularly late, is that people are traveling forwards and backwards in time. And some people are moving backwards in time, and they interact with people moving forwards in time only through the magic of cinema. You never People never realize it's themselves moving backwards in time, such as in this particular instance. So you see the main character here seeing some bullet holes, and then they go, "Well, what's going on? Why are the bullet holes here?" And you go, "Oh, they haven't happened yet." And then this person, you can see this sort of machine thing with two halves, and it goes all spinny, and someone leaps out, and then they unshoot, they suck the bullet hole out and back into their gun, and it's really cool. And that was very exciting. And I saw the movie and I really enjoyed it. And we were talking at one point, so the topic of hack ops came up, and we were talking about, oh, what can we do for hack ops? And someone was talking about doing a replay system. I thought, oh, you know what we could do? We could have a replay system that replays backwards, and then we could do Tenet. We could have people moving forwards and people moving backwards at the same time. Let's have a look at what we could do in the game design. So here's a simple kind of presentation of what you could do with the time reversal kind of stuff. So you saw in the movie there was that gatey kind of stuff. Let's just say there's a red gate, and when you go through that gate, you're now traveling backwards in time. And when you go through a blue gate, you're traveling forwards in time. So we start here, we're Mr. Blue, we're traveling forwards in time, we've got a gun because we're in Tenet, and they all have guns. You walk forward, time has progressed forward, it's 4 seconds in the future. You walk through the gate, and now you're traveling backwards in time. So now time is going backwards, it's back to time 3, and now it's back to time 0. It's the same time as when you started this whole shenanigan. You go through the forward gate and you're out. And so that's your perspective. You're just sort of walking straight. As far as you're concerned, you just go and walk, 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 walk. You don't sort of have to turn around and walk backwards or anything. You're just walking through. Uh, but that's, of course, not what really happens, because you start the same. You walk through, you go through the first gate, but now you're moving forward. But because time is reversing, at the time 3, there was a version of you who was standing over here. You're moving backwards in time, they're moving forwards in time. That this gate here sort of spawns an extra version of you, and you're sort of splitting apart. And you keep walking forward and they keep walking backwards. So from your perspective, you're moving backwards in time, but from your perspective, they're moving backwards. Time is reversing. We're doing the same thing as we were before, just walking straight through here. Now we see this person reversing back to where they started. You walk through the gate, and now you're traveling forwards in time. And now this person who's moving backwards in time, it looks like they're moving backwards, and they're sort of we're back at time 3 where we were before when there were just 2, but now there's an extra one of you. And so this guy's moving forward, this guy's moving forward in time, and you're moving forward in time, but one version of you is moving backwards in time. So that's kind of nifty. Can we do it? It's not that hard, surely. So design principle number 1. Let's make a game where we have that happen, because that sounds like it would be cool, and maybe we can turn it into a game of some sort. So you start at time 0, and you move to forward in time for a bit, and then you pass through a gate, and then you're moving backwards in time for a bit, and then you pass through another gate, and you're moving forward and backwards and forward and backwards, and finally you hit a thing and you win. And to propel the game forward, to make sure you've got an actual goal and a reason for being in the game, you've got to have a lose condition. And that lose condition is, okay, if you exceed 30 seconds in the future, then you lose. And if you go 30 seconds, more than minus 30 seconds into the past, then you lose. So you've always got a goal in this game. You're traveling forward, and so we can put obstacles in the way. We could turn it into a simple maze or a dexterity kind of game. We just got to leap forward, and you've got to make it towards a goal, and you leap through, and then now you've got to make it all the way back to the other place, and you're sort of passing by the previous version of yourself who's still doing that thing, and maybe you jump onto their head or something. So that's kind of cool. And as a principle here, these gates, of course, are one way. You pass through them, and then you can't really go back. That doesn't make any sense, because um, and passing through the gate triggers the reversal of the time. So you go through, and now you're doing that. All right. So the second thing that I thought would be really cool in the game is, of course, we've got to have the unshooting. You've got to be able to point a gun at something and slurp the bullet back out, and slurp the bullet into your gun, and that sounds really cool. So what can we do with that? So the thing that really got me excited about this and made me go, oh, I know, I'm going to pitch this, was the idea of a rhythm shooter. So a rhythm shooter is a game where you have to shoot particular targets at particular times, um, and they're pretty common. So here we have a situation where something might be unexploding. You've got a implosion coming inwards, and then you have to click on it at the very moment that the explosion stops, and you were then the source of that explosion. You're traveling backwards in time. You're slurping the bullet back out of the gun. So that sounds like it could be a fun mechanic. So we've got two mechanics in the game now. We've got you're traveling from gate to gate. That's the thing that keeps you moving, and we've got these this rhythm shooter kind of aspect. You have to be unshooting things. And for simplicity's sake, I thought, well, let's not introduce the unshooting thing right away. Let's make that a reverse time thing. When you're traveling in reverse time, you get to do the rhythm shooter. When you're traveling in forward time, you don't get to do that because I mean, there's no reason you couldn't do it that way, but you know, for simplicity's sake, maybe we'll introduce that later on in the game. And so then the final mechanic, before we actually go back to the game and continue it, is the idea of paradox and coherency. So what happens if you don't shoot the rhythm thing? So the implosion happens, and it goes to the point, and you don't pull the trigger, or you're pointing in the wrong direction or something. Well, I think the idea that I had was that it still happens. Maybe someone else does it, like you in another version, another iteration. Maybe a future you will do it. But in the meantime, you lose health bar. And if you lose enough health bar, then you lose. So you're incentivized to keep shooting it. And we call a health bar coherency, because you're coherent with the past. You're making a consistent future past. No paradoxes. Speaking of paradoxes, um, say we've got back to the situation here. You're walking through the gate, and now you're traveling in reverse time, um, and your past self, who is walking toward the gate, goes, huh? Or you're here kind of going, huh? I don't remember seeing me. Because you totally would have, right? You'd be walking up to the gate, and you would see the future version of yourself walking backwards. And unfortunately, Unreal does not have a publicly shared time travel module, so we can't actually have the future you doing that. It leads to time paradox. It's something awful. So how do we deal with that? How do we deal with the problem of time paradoxes in the game? If we're going to have people traveling forwards and backwards, we're going to have time paradoxes. You travel through the gate, or you see a future version of yourself, and then you don't do what they do. So the first possible solution is, who cares? Like, just ignore it. You walk up to the gate, you come through, you don't remember seeing the future version of yourself there, but what do they know? They're just a memory. That's a bit unsatisfying. The whole in the movie Tenet, everything is super consistent, because Christopher Nolan is like that. He loves having everything just be, oh yeah, it all makes sense when you really think about it. It doesn't. It's complete nonsense. So second solution, level design. It's a solution to everything. It's wonderful. You just design the level so that situation doesn't come up. As you're coming up to the thing, it's cunningly designed with angles and stuff so that you never get to see your future self. But maybe your future self is up on a balcony there, and they can look down and see past self and go, haha, I see you. And they kind of might have to in order to do some of these shooting things, as we'll see in a moment. Next possibility is a one-way mirror. So there's a one-way mirror, and it's facing this way, so future you can see past you. Past you, they only see the blank side of the mirror. So that's an easy cheat. It's pretty easy to do on Unity. And then another solution is to make it the player's problem. So if you do happen to get into eyesight of the past you, then you lose coherency. So don't do it, because that would be bad. So that's another solution. There's another solution again, but I'll save that for later. Okay, so one last thing before we go back to the game and continue on it. The exploding blocks. So we want to have some cool unshooting things. So let's make it a big block that explodes and has bits. And what happens to that block over time is block exists, it exists, it exists, it exists, it exists, it exists, it explodes. And if we're unshooting, then we're coming from the future here. So we don't see a block, we don't see a block. We see the implosion, we shoot, and then there's a block there. And so that's the rhythm shooter aspect, of course. But then the block's presence after that could be a part of the gameplay. Maybe it's blocking the progress of the player when they're traveling in forward time. So I made some principles of how blocks work. They can only explode once. You can't have it explode and then unexplode and then explode and unexplode. And it's always going to happen at the same time. As we discovered later, it's kind of useful if it can also, that explosion or unexplosion can trigger animations. So that you can do more sophisticated things than just have, there are blocks and they're blocking the way, or they're blocks that you can stand on or whatever. All right, let's go back to the game. Okay. Oh, here we are. Okay, so now we're in reverse time. And look, there's our previous self and they're walking backwards. And they're standing there. And here's some unexplosions. And we are responsible for unshooting those 4 things. We've done the rhythm thing. Hooray, we've unshot 4. Now you may notice on the bottom left-hand side, we've got 4 bullets because we just unshot 4 things. And so now we're traveling forwards in time again. Because we just went through another gate. And so you can see our backward version self just there. And then you can see our forward version self from the original bit over there as well. So let's just continue here. So there they are, they're doing their thing. And we have got a couple of bullets. We can use those to clear some space over here. Now we can see our previous versions of the 2 selves. They are going to walk towards the gate and then both disappear. Whoop. There we go. And now we can go through the exit gate and we win the level. Okay. All right, so let's go back to the presentation. So that's, we got it working. First of all, you can see there's multiple versions of ourselves. All of those were the previous versions of ourselves that we thought were the replay versions. Some of them running backwards and some of them running forwards. There's some other things that we were able to do. So we got excited by the explosion mechanic, and later on, this was actually a bit after the Hack Ops, but I thought it would be cool to do because it's based on some of the work we did in the Hack Ops, is you can trigger animations just with a trigger pad. And you can, with those, they're like the explosion, but you can trigger them multiple times. You step onto them, you make the thing go up. You step off them, the thing goes down. You step onto it, it goes up again. And so things can trigger multiple times. So that was useful for another thing that I will show you right now. Let's go back to the game. So there's a couple more level things that I want to show you. Next level. So here we are. I talked about the blocks exploding, triggering animations. So that was an animation of a thing going down. This is an animation of a thing falling over. There's an explosion causing a thing to close. There's a little message saying us to watch the gap. What gap? Here's some stairs that go. Oh, look, there's the gap. We cross over that. We travel through the gate. Now we're going backwards in time. There's our backwards traveling self. And as per before, we've got to do the unshooting at the right time. Now we've got a message that we've got to send to our past self because we remember seeing the message there. Another one. And the final block there. And now we can walk to the exit gate and win. And you see, you disappear there because you don't exist before time 0. Okay. Okay, so that's nice. So we saw a couple of extra little mechanics there. One was built by Lindsay, one of the team. He loved the idea of having messages from your future self, and then when you get to that point in the future, you've got to remember what the message was so that you can send it to your past self. And if you don't, then you lose coherency. So coherency has become our catch-all for if the time, if you don't have the paradox working out correctly, then you just lose coherency. It's a very simple mechanic. So I'd like to show off one last aspect of the game before we go to some of the tech details behind how we did all of this. And do we have time? Yeah, I've got time. So I'm actually just going to go into the game itself here. So I talked about the possible solutions to how not to see the future version of yourself. But what if you can see the future version of yourself? And so here we've got an impassable wall, and there's a future version of ourselves. They walk backwards onto that trigger pad that I was talking about, lifting up that gate. And now they're walking backwards there. They walk backwards out of there. So we can see a future version of ourselves. So how do we make sure that there's no time paradox there? Well, we can pass through this gate, and there's a special trigger pad thing here, and the countdown timer, and when it hits 0, then we enter the DDR section, where you've got to, you don't actually have control over it. I'm not using the controls anymore, but you get shown the commands that you've got to type in order to go. And if you miss the commands, then it punishes you and you lose coherency. Coherency is in the bottom right there. So yeah, then we can sort of travel through the thing and then we can beat the level. So I just wanted to show that because I thought that was rather cool. Okay, so that's all of the mechanics of the game. Let's talk about how we used Unity to reverse time. So the first technical challenge that we had, so we had a bunch of technical challenges, and some of them were super hard, and super hard for me personally because for things like Hack Ops or a game jam, I really enjoy doing the game jams, but I don't enjoy learning things in game jams. Game jams are for exercising things I already know. And I had, because I wanted to do this Tenet kind of idea, I didn't actually know how to do some of the technology that I was going to be doing in the game. And so I did a little bit of, I didn't actually copy any of the code or anything, but I did some de-risking. Before we began the project, I tried out some of these things just to make sure that I knew how to do it, and that when we actually got to the game jam, it was about flow, not about, oh shit, how do I do this? So the first technical challenge was, how do we do the one-way gates? Because I'd never done a one-way gate before. You've got to be able to go in one way, you can't go in the other way. So that's pretty easy in Unity. You can just have the quad, and quads have only got one side, so you can walk through them one way and not the other way. So that's pretty easy. You do, it's not really designed for that though, quads, because if when you're intersecting with the quad, the physics engine doesn't want you and that quad occupying the same space at the same time, so it gives you a violent little push out. But it does effectively, you can set a texture on one side and a transparent texture so that you can see through the gateway, like, we could see through the gateway there. And from the other side, it's opaque and you can't actually step into it. So that serves a good purpose. And so that's what we've got here. That's the black dotted line. From the right-hand side, it looks completely opaque, and from the left-hand side, it's transparent. So when you are stepping in, you don't see this green thing here. That's a trigger area. As far as you're concerned, you're walking through a semi-opaque gateway. When you touch the trigger area, it slams down a gate behind you. And that is the trigger for time to reverse. So that really simple. It's just an airlock, right? But it took me ages to realize, oh, I can just do it with an airlock. Have the two things here, one transparent, the other one just being a gate. And I kept having problems with it. This is a fun little thing. I kept having problems with it. I kept being pushed out very violently whenever the gateway slammed shut. This one came down. I would suddenly get ejected from there and just sort of fly out at great speed. And I was going, oh, I just put it too close to myself, and I just made the gate wider and wider. I made the airlock bigger and bigger, and I kept being pushed out. I was going, what on earth is going on here? What is causing me to keep being pushed out? And I think you might already be ahead of me here, but when we reverse time, there are two versions of me standing on the same spot. So I get pushed out by myself, the version of me that's because we're splitting at that point. took me ages to work that out. Anyway, yeah, just turn off the collider on the previous version of yourself, and it was all good. And you kind of do want the collider on later on so that you can interact with them in interesting ways. So as soon as they exit that area, you can turn the collider back on. But for that moment, it was hilarious. I just could not make the gate wide enough. Anyway. So the second big technical challenge was how to play entities backwards. And this was not too hard either, really. This is the classic replay kind of thing. You want to replay a character or a situation in a game. Now, there is prior art to this in other games. Of course, you probably heard of Braid, which is a pretty cool game. And that one's got you're replaying the position of the characters. But I wanted to make something that was sufficiently different. But of course, that aspect is very similar. You just simply record the position of yourself as you're going through, your position and rotation. In fact, you don't even need to do you need to do you don't need to do pitch or roll and your position, and then you just save those into an array. And whenever you go through a gate, you just put that array aside and start another array. So once you go through the gate, you go, okay, so this array, now I'm going to play that one backwards. And you get this whole stack of previous lists. So in this example here, you got, once again, we've walked through this and we've got two previous versions of myself. This one here that we just finished recording, we're playing that one backwards. And this one here, we're playing forwards. So that's all pretty straightforward. And I was recording, I was capturing the state of those on a tick, and it was filling, it fills up a meg in no time flat, but it's not that bad. I I'm used to conserving space for that kind of thing, and I was going, how can I optimize? And then I was going, well, why not just try it and see if it slows down horribly? And it didn't. Of course, it didn't. It's only a meg. So whenever you go through the gate, it starts a new list and it playbacks all of the previous lists. So you can sort of go through multiple gates and you'll see multiple previous versions of yourself. There's just one problem with that. It does the movement of you and you're facing in the correct direction. But as you may know, we were animating the characters as well, doing the running. And of course, they'll still be doing the running forward while they're moving backwards, and it looks super weird. And when you're doing the jumping, it does it wrong. And when you're doing the shooting, it does it wrong. So we need to play the character animations backwards as well. And for that, once again, it was pretty straightforward. We used the starter character's third-person controller, which tells the animation when to go into different states. So when to go into the walking state of animation and when to go into the running state of animation. And we just recorded all of those along with the position and the rotation of the character. So you record what speed you're going, what your jump status is, and what your shoot status is. And then when you're playing it backwards, we saved a different version of the animation just with all of the speed set to -1, and it was that easy. So there's a blend tree for going between standing still, walking, and running, and then you just go to the standstill animation, set the speed to -1, and walking and speed -1. Just animations work like that. It's great. So you can just set speed -1 on all of those things and they'll all animate backwards. And then we just had two different copies, and of course you need different avatars for the backwards moving guy, so you just give them the backwards animations, and animations for the forward guy, so you give them the forward animations. Surprisingly straightforward. Then there's particle effects, and I was expecting this to be a nightmare, and at first it was. I had to delve deep, and I was looking into shaders, and people were talking about complicated situations. And as it turned out, there is a very simple solution for this. But if you're running Unity 2018 or previously, it doesn't work. It's a bug in Unity. It might work in Unreal, but it doesn't work in Unity. And that is the particle effects can be, as long as they're procedural particle effects, you can just set them to be any time. So you can freeze them, and you can freeze a particle effect in time. You can make it play backwards. You can make it play double speed, half speed. You can do anything with it, just by because you can do this thing, the particle.simulate, and then just set the time and a couple of extra parameters. The important thing for that is some of the particles effects have got random seeds on them, and you need to set the random seed rather than making it an automatic random seed, and you probably want to set a different random seed for each one so that the explosions all look individual. But if you leave auto random seed, it'll do a different random seed for each one, and you just get this crazy mess of stuff because it doesn't know how to make things look a particular way at one time. There are also other effects that you can't do in particle effects, like limiting velocity over the lifetime, and of course you can't modify the properties of the in script as you're going along on them because that's not reversible. Uh, then there was the triggered animations. As you saw, I had the pad that you step on, and that caused the gate to lift up. And when you step away from it, it causes the gate to go down. Uh, and once again, you can do those exactly the same way. You can play it with speed -1. Just start it from the end point of the animation, and you need to know to start it a second before when you're traveling in reverse time, because you know it needs to start before you step on the pad when you're traveling in reverse time. And the other way that you can do it, which is actually really handy, is just set it, as with the particle effect, you can set it to an arbitrary timestamp. And that's particularly good on the trigger pad because you can step onto the pad, step off the pad, step onto it, and it just goes down a little bit, up and down a little bit, and it just knows what state it should be in at any given time based on when you last stepped on the pad. Right, pretty straightforward. So that's the technical aspect, which was kind of we put a lot of effort into it, but a lot of it was flow kind of effort. And if you've done any experience with Unity and even just working with the starter projects, it wasn't anything super sophisticated going on. The main things that we did that really got us propelling our team of 7 people. Bilal, Cedar, David, Emily, John, and Lindsay. When I pitched it, I got 7 people in immediately, and I knew we had an enormous team. I've never run a hackathon with that many people before. We needed it to be super organized so that people would be able to get into flow and be able to do stuff and not tread on each other's toes and chaos and disorganization and horror. Fortunately, these are great people to be working with. Bilal and Cedar have tremendous experience in doing other game jams. David is an absolute machine for being able to go away and do their own thing. That they can, you put them on a task and they just go for it and smash out stuff. Emily was an intern and she was really keen to learn, and so I needed to make sure that there was good stuff that I could pair with her on, and then she could go away and do her own stuff if she wanted to. John was our level designer, and so we had lots of sessions before the Hack Ops started where we sort of talked about the kind of things that we could do. And he was the one who pitched the idea of doing animations attached to the explosions, and I really wasn't sure whether that was going to work. And then Bilal and Cedar said, "Oh yeah, it's easy. We'll just do it." And I was like, "Wow, this is so cool." And Lindsay came up with the idea. He was responsible for the UI and some level design as well. He made another level, and he was responsible for the backwards in time, the messages from the future that you get. Uh, so the reason that I bring their individual roles up into all of this was because that was important to working out how we were going to get through the hack ops in time and get everyone getting some good flow. So the tools that we used during the development, we had a Trello board of tasks. We used a live stream on Discord where I was just constantly, all the time, programming on the live stream, showing just as I am now what I was up to, and we just kept everything synced up with our repo in GitHub. Uh, and here's a Trello board in a partially completed kind of state. And the important thing for here was a thing that I found tremendously useful, particularly in this project, was having a terminology section so that we were all on the same page with regard to how everything was going to work. And that we had the terminology of unshoot, which I have not been using consistently in this presentation. And we've got the idea of you're traveling. There's a loop time as opposed to a game time. That's the time in the loop, like plus or minus 30 seconds or whatever. And when you're traveling backwards in time, it's going negative, and when you're traveling forwards in time, going positive. And some of these concepts of how the blocks work. So for example, some of those blocks you saw in that first level, the blocks mysteriously explode, and those were called mystery blocks, where they're going to explode, and they have to be caused by someone in traveling in reverse time unshooting them. And if so, you record the loop time in which you are expecting someone to unshoot them, and if they don't, then they lose coherence. Then there are the regular blocks, explodable blocks, which so when we get to the end of that level, and you'd have to blow up those blocks to get through because you've got a couple of bullets. Those are just regular explodable blocks. And then there are motivated blocks, where a block has been has a reason for it to be shot. So if you were to come back again and do another loop in it, you would see the blocks unexploding, but you know why they're unexploding, and you don't get pinged for it. Yeah, that's all I had to talk about. Are there any questions?
Okay, everyone. I hope your head is not hurting as badly as mine is. Um, if anyone does have any questions, please put them into the chat and I will relay them over. One thing which I will just say, Andrew mentioned at the start that this was part of a Hack Ops project, which is our internal hackathon slash game jam in Wargaming Sydney. And at the end of the game jam, we vote on a couple of different categories. One of those categories is most innovative. And it should come as a surprise to absolutely no one that Andrew's team won most innovative. I won't say how much of a gap it was between the next game, but they clearly won. It was one of the awards where I just had to very quickly look at the poll and go, okay, I know who won that one. So yes, if anyone has any questions for Andrew, please pop them into the chat. I'll get one to kick us off. So when it came time to, you get the team together, everyone's like, yes, want to be involved with this. How long did it take you to explain the concept to them?
Individually, yeah.
No.
I did individual pitches to everyone because it is a difficult concept to explain. Particularly, at least 3/4 of the team had not seen Tenet, although a couple of them saw the movie afterwards.
Yeah.
And just the concept of traveling backwards in time, it caught us up again and again as we were programming. And at one point, one of the team saw in that first level the two people going into the gate and disappearing together, and he's saying, "Is that a bug?" And I was going, "No, no, that's kind of what happens." And I never quite figured out how you use the same bullet to unshoot the first block and then shoot a completely different block. It works. I mean,
Time
logically,
paradox.
I don't even know if it's a paradox. It's just a consequence of being able to travel backwards in time.
Excellent. Well, I do have one question from a very familiar name.
Who?
Bilal asks,
Oh,
you mentioned some things that went well during the jam, but I'm
yes.
curious if there's anything you do differently when you go through two time gates and try again.
So things to do differently. So there was a little bit of wasted time in the Hack Ops because of issues with we were all working from home, and some people had their main computers at work. And in order to use your computer at work, you have to go through a thing called RPC, no, Remote Desktop Client RDC, and that sometimes controlling games through remote desktop is a pain in the neck, because if you move the cursor outside the space of that, then it stops working. And one of the guys got really, they were trying to do UI stuff, and the game kept stopping working, and they couldn't figure out why. And then we eventually realized, oh, it's just the remote desktop client. It's got nothing to do with the game. Stupid thing. Hateful
Technical
argument.
issues abound.
Yes. Other than that, honestly, I mean, the fact that we were all working remotely. This was actually this was the last week where we thought that we were all going to be together, and Wargaming had booked lunches for everyone, and pizzas for dinner and all that kind of stuff. And that was the first week of the COVID resurgence, and we were like, "Oh no, no, I have to do the whole thing from home."
Yes, I remember that day well. I was frantically canceling pizzas and canceling
Yes,
sandwiches, and what are we going to do? So how long? Okay, we have a question. How long was the hackathon?
3 days. So yeah, we didn't have full team strength until the second day because a couple of the people were only able to sort of make half of the first day or not the first day at all because of other commitments. Um, but yeah, 7 people, 3 days. So it was an enormous amount of firepower to concentrate in on the game, and we were very keen to get an MVP, a minimum possible game, going in the first day, and we didn't, but it was going by midway through the second day. We had something that we could present. And then once everyone was engaged and, we had Bilal and Cedar just smashing through stuff, we had a working game and we were designing levels and coming up with new stuff for it all the way through. The DDR section where you sort of have to you see the future version of yourself and then you have to actually just follow the instructions to do that kind of stuff. That was something that didn't make it quite in on the that was just missed it by that much. Um, and so I was absolutely determined. I wanted to show it off in this presentation because it was such cool work. There was also work done on making the explosions cooler by having blocks pop out all over the place, and that actually does work. If we go back to, I am keen to show this off. Just a second.
Now's the time.
Now's the time. So we've got levels. Okay.
So while Andrew's finding that,
Scenes.
technically he's wrong. The entire game jam does last 3 days, but they really only had 2.5 to get this done because
Oh yeah.
the end of the third day is actually when everyone gets to go around and see all the games that everyone's made. So yeah,
Yes.
this
Really
phenomenal achievement actually took 2.5 days.
Yes. So this is the bit with the extra explosions. So. Whoop. Doo-ba-doo-ba-doo.
I do love the cool jazz.
Yeah, me too. There you go. It explodes with bits now.
Even Bilal probably hasn't seen that.
No, that's right. This is one of the bits that Emily worked very hard on getting it working, and now we can see all of the bits that are rising into the air and.
Oh, brilliant.
So cool.
Well done.
Really want.
Um, okay, Tony Hill asks, where and how can I play this game?
Oh, damn, Paul. I was hoping to ask you. Can I release it? That version?
I think so. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think we can.
it's
Yeah,
just here.
we'll get that looked at, Tony. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's got a couple of levels in it, and
yeah.
there's one level that we haven't showed off. That one's one designed by Lindsay, and it's really cool. But
Ah, well,
it
don't
doesn't
show
show
it
off
now
any.
because we'll keep that as a
I won't.
surprise
I
for
won't. But
people to be able to
it
play it.
doesn't show off any new mechanics, but it really exercises the mechanics that we've got.
Yeah, make sure you're on our meetup mailing list, and
Mm,
I can use the meetup mailing list to send it out. Send out a link when we have that.
yes.
Um, okay. Are there any plans to develop the game further?
Oh, yes, yes. So I desperately want to, and at the same time, I because it was developed in Wargaming Sydney's time, I'm never going to sell it. But I do want to push it to the point where it's a cool game that has got some cool mechanics. That means it's never going to look good because we didn't have any artists, and I'm not going to get any artists onto it unless they want to. If you're an artist and you want to contribute, that's great. This brings up the next question: do we make the GitHub repository public? And that's another discussion with Wargaming. I'll get
Mm.
back to you. We can certainly release the game, as Paul mentioned. Whether we can open source it and let people work on it as they wish, that's another question. The um, so I'm going to be working on it. I want to get so you could see the DDR section, and it was still needs a little bit of work making it really smooth and work effectively with everything else. But what it does unlock is the possibility now of you interacting with multiple future versions of yourself. You walk into a scene, you see a version of yourself coming up and hitting another version of yourself on the head. Another version of yourself is on fire, and another version of yourself is putting them out. And you go, "What the hell?" Then you go through the levels and you become each of those people in turn. In the bits where they're all where you can see them and people can see each other, you're following that DDR section and you're sort of doing the quick time events. Another possibility for those as well is that instead of doing DDR, you've got, in race games how you can see the race leader as a ghost kind of thing. You could do
Yeah.
the same thing as there, where there's a ghost and you've just got to make your character follow that ghost and stay as close as possible. Otherwise, you lose coherence in the same way. But in either case, you're sort of forced to do those things at the moments that the characters can see each other. When no one can see you, you can do whatever you like. And when you are moving around and a past version of yourself can see you, again, you lose coherence because they go, "Oh, what's going on?" And that's a time paradox. You can't have that. So you can have hide and seek games with yourself. I'm definitely making a level where one of the versions of you is doing DDR kind of thing, and then a future version of you has to evade them. It's like those old thief games where you have to evade the sentry, except the sentry is yourself from a previous loop. I'm
My
looking forward
head's
to
starting to hurt again.
that.
Uh, did you run into any performance issues with storing and replaying data?
No, it was a tiny amount of data. Really, it's not really not that much. Having said that, there is many ways that it can be stored way more efficiently than it is, and I was trying to be very stern with myself. Do not preemptively fix performance issues when there are no performance issues. So the moment the game starts to slow down by performance issues, that's when I address it. The first thing that you can do, and I should have done, but I didn't realize it was a thing that I could do, is instead of doing everything on tick, you do it on direct tick. No, there's a constant tick. It's a physics tick that happens, and if you do it on that, that's not as fast as a rendering tick, and so you're storing less data, but you're not actually losing any information because that is the tick that the physics happens on, and so there's no actual meaningful information that happens in the rendering ticks. So yeah, so that's an easy and fast saving in space. Another one is once you pass through the gate, you can compress the previous stuff because a lot of it is you standing around or moving in very logical ways, so you can just lerp between them.
Um, did the team come up with any processes or techniques for designing these time reversal puzzles?
Ha. Um, Techniques. Some of the techniques that came out as it went along were the ones where the animations that happen. And of course, when you're traveling backwards in time, you will sometimes you have the effect that the animation starts occurring before the event that triggers it. Uh, and when you have the exploding blocks, you have the block pieces start to move before the event that triggers those. So some of the mechanics that we came up with that we haven't implemented yet are things like uh, there's a you cause a thing to fall over in when you're traveling in reverse time, it's going up and you can actually then run up it and sort of continue on as you go. We came up with a lot of ideas and mechanics and things that we could do with the stuff that we had, including that hide and seek thing that we were talking about, that we just didn't have time to implement in the levels that we had. Uh, and the mechanic of the message from your future self was one that Lindsay came up with and just implemented and did by himself.
We have a comment. Imagine if you went around shooting time reversal portals onto the walls with a portal gun. Is that something you've considered doing?
uh, so I mean, one issue with it is it you could I mean okay every issue has a well don't do that kind of thing as a thing, but you could end up in a rough spot by reversing time when you're very close to the end times that we've defined as being the hurting points. I don't see a reason why that couldn't be a portal mechanic though. That's kind of cool.
Okay, let me just check, make sure there's nothing I've missed. Zozo said, I'm a studying artist. If I knew a bit more, I'd give it a shot. Sadly, too soon for me. Zozo, I don't know if it is too soon. That is the whole point of game jams. It's to get
Yeah.
experience and to learn more from people. So, if you see any game jams coming up, put yourself forward for them. Don't think, oh, I don't have enough experience for this.
One thing that I do want to call out as well is we didn't make any visual assets for that Minerva. We used no, we used free assets from I forgot the name of it. From a website made by Adobe. I think it's called Minerva, that lets you that has animations, and it's got heaps of animations for jumping, running, walking, pistol shooting, all of that kind of thing, including many animations that we didn't end up using. And we used free assets for everything. The explosion was one of the starter asset explosions, uh, and we did some modifications to it to make it be able to play backwards and to have a more prominent halo effect, so that where you can more easily see when the explosions, when you have to shoot to do the end explosion bit. But
Bilal has chimed in with Mixamo. Does that ring a bell?
Mixama, yes, that's the one. Thank you, Bilal. He of the good memory.
Zozo has asked, how difficult was the DDR section? I found that part awesome, as did Wheeler.
Yes, so that's a thing that I really want to expand on and make it work properly. I only gave a brief demo of that kind of one because there's a couple of things that you need to program when you're doing the level. The first thing you need to do is, how do you get the future version of yourself running through there? So I've got a record mode in the game where so the first thing that happens is I set the pad to automatically trigger at a certain point. Uh, then that allows me to run through the game. Then when I get to the point where you can see the reverse time person going through, then I hit record, and I record that, and it does the the replay stuff and saves it to a file. Then I need to program the DDR section on it by going through and saying and looking at, okay, so at this time I was standing here and then I'm standing here. So from this time to this time I need to have it hit W for this long. So one thing that I need to do for that is be able to you know, program the DDR section, so that when you're playing through the character movement, then you can just go, all right, you should be pressing W now, and then just sort of record that bit. And that I think closes off the loop. That makes everything possible. Next task for me, to be honest.
So you didn't, I don't think you set up any sort of death states. Um, is there any possibility that a past you could shoot a future you and break the game?
Yes, of course. And I do want that kind of thing. In fact, I do want you can see situations where future you is being attacked, or something is about to happen. And if you don't shoot the monster that's sort of leaping onto you, then your future you will die. And maybe you see it from afar in the first loop and you go, I didn't even have a chance to do that. And then you travel through two loops and now you do have a chance to do that. And then if you don't do it, of course, you don't die immediately. You die when you actually get to that section. Or, yeah,
Ooh,
maybe you
Nick
lose coherence
has
by turning around and shooting them.
another familiar name. Nick has an interesting question. What if I accidentally kill my past self?
Ha! You can't, so don't. Well, you lose coherence. So it brings an interesting point, though, as well. Not only can you shoot, could you shoot maybe a past self, but there are the explodable blocks. What if you explode a block before it's supposed to explode? Um, and my solution to that is, you can only explode a block once when it's supposed to explode. So if it's a motivated one, like you are programmed, you have to unshoot it at that particular time. Shooting it earlier, oh, it looks like it didn't hit a vital spot and cause an explosion. Oh well. Also, you don't start with any bullets.
Ah, of course. Good way to stop people from having errant bullets flying around.
Yes, you got to
Um,
preserve your bullet. But yes, the idea that you can shoot your past self as well. Again, we're trying to do the Tenet thing and have no time paradoxes. But maybe you see there's a bullet hole in your leg, and so you have to shoot your past self.
I can't wait to see where you take this. Really can't.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to bring things to a close now. So we're going to head over to the Games with Wings Discord channel now. There is a channel in there which is called, see if I can find it here, the Sydney Game Developer Meetup. I will paste the link for that into the chat now. Hopefully you can all see that. Yep, and we'll be hanging out there. If you have any other questions that you want to ask Andrew, we'll be there. As I said earlier, Wargaming Sydney is hiring. So if you are interested in a career in games, or if you think that Wargaming Sydney looks pretty cool and you want to work with someone like Andrew, why wouldn't you? I've also popped the link for that into the chat so you can have a look at our jobs. So yes, thank you very much. I think we ended up with about 30 people watching this talk tonight, all getting very, very confused by Andrew. So yep, hopefully you'll all come over to the Discord channel. We'll be able to continue the chat there. And thank you very, very much. A round of applause for Andrew. In fact, if you enjoyed this, let Andrew know by hitting the like button. And then I'll tell him later on how many likes he got. That's one good way of doing it. Yes, so subscribe in the whatchamacallit below. What are all the things people always say? Hit the notification button to get updated when we do this. Button. Smash the like button. Yeah, we're very practiced here, as you can see.
Oh yes, yes.
Yep. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Again, and we will see you over on Discord. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.